All right, welcome to Fixing Bikes and Starting Fights, this time on campus, also known as How to Establish a Campus Bike Shop on Your Campus. I'm Justin Delgado. I am an instructor for Humboldt State University's Bicycle Learning Center, and joining me is our director.
Hi, I'm Colin Weichler, Director of the Bicycle Learning Center.
All right, well, we look forward to all of you getting some useful information from this presentation. Right off the bat, we want to share our contact information just so that if there are any questions post viewing of this presentation, you guys can reach out to either the BLC or Colin or myself, as well as check out the RAP website, which is the program that we are a part of on Humboldt State's page. So this presentation will take about half an hour. So feel free to, watch it in chunks, and or if you are attending this live, chiming in with questions whenever needed. So first off, we want to establish what it is that we're talking about. What does a campus bike shop look like? Now, what we're referring to is a space for bicycle repair, one that has the necessary tools to educate people on bicycle maintenance, tools as well as guidance for teaching those who want to work on bikes themselves or know how to but don't have the tools. And this is you want this program to be conducive to learning. That's the overall goal of any shop on a CSU campus, and that's what our shop does up here in Humboldt.
Here we have some examples of bike repair programs. On the left, we have our very own Bicycle Learning Center. It's under a staircase, nice and cute, Harry Potter closet. In the middle, we have CSU Northridge's bike shop. They run out of a truck. It's pretty neat. And on the right, we have Chico's bike cart, which they can tow around by bicycle, I believe. Northridge and Chico's programs are on hold this year, unfortunately. But if you want to find out more about those, they have a little bit on their Associated Students website. Thank you for joining us, Matt. We just got going. You haven't missed anything that we won't get back to later. So before you can really start thinking about starting a program, you should determine whether or not there's actually a need for one. If it's just something you and a couple friends want, it's going to be hard to get anything established because you'll need broader campus support. And before putting in all that hard work, it would be best to check in with some students that you don't know as well and see if they want to see a shop where they could learn how to fix their bikes. It's also a good way to get people interested in helping you as well. You don't want to do all this work yourself. It won't be that easy. I certainly wouldn't want to take it on alone. If you happen to go to CSU Bakersfield, you should know that your bike share place already has a little repair program up and going. Would be a great opportunity for improvement. And some campuses have little like fix-it stations scattered around. They don't really fill the same function. You kind of have to know what you're doing going in. So if you're pushing for a bike center and someone tells you that you don't need one because you already have fix-it stations, just remind them that you're not learning at a fix-it station, and anyone who doesn't know what they're doing won't be able to do what they need to do.
Okay, so concocting a plan. We want to preface this with saying that we are an Associated Students program, and our suggestion is that anyone who looks to establish a program such as ours on their campus go through Associated Students. We've had a great relationship with them so far, and we see it as the best route for all other interested programs to take. And so as far as creating a plan, it's good going into it knowing that you're going to have to present your idea to the AS Board of Directors, and they will have guidelines and suggestions for you to strengthen your proposal. This will be given to you either talking with AS before you present to the Board of Directors, or after your presentation. There is no perfect proposal. They're going to have comments that are going to need to be addressed. And so over the next few slides, we're going to cover sort of information that you need to be aware of and have in a presentable format before going to the board. You don't need to figure out all the little details, but it is good to be as prepared as possible going into a meeting with the AS board.
For some folks, a good place to start will be establishing a mission for what you're trying to do. This can be flexible, it can change, you don't necessarily need one, but it could help you get pointed in the right direction and keep you on track. We have ours in the green box here. I'll go ahead and just read the second half of it. By providing tools, parts, and education for students to practice bicycle maintenance, we empower the community to ride and maintain bicycles with confidence, as well as to share their knowledge and skills with others. And that's pretty much what we do. That's what we've always tried to do. I think that's a good starting place for a mission personally, but might be a little subjective there. As you can see, we put a major focus on education rather than just fixing students' bikes. Having worked in a professional shop, I really prefer our model. It's much more gratifying and you get to send people away with something that they'll use to save themselves money and maybe have a little fun instead of just going to a shop and getting yelled at. We've all been there, I think.
Yes, we have. Okay, so a good place to start after having this particular idea is, do you have a location in mind? And location isn't necessarily just where on campus. For instance, it could be your method of shop. For instance, we saw in some of the examples that Colin talked about, our space is one that is fixed underneath a staircase, but there are other methods such as Chico, which is in a sunny, hot, and most of the time dry area. So a bike cart that can travel around and doesn't necessarily need to be under some protected area all the time is a great alternative. And although again that we are not a mobile shop, we do have a mobile stand and a mobile repair kit that we take with us down this picture. You can see into the quad, for instance. And this is a good way to sort of outreach and educate about your space during an event. For instance, this was, I believe, during a club's fair or Associated Students Fair. So there's lots of different methods to choosing a shop location. And following this, you want to know before presenting to the board who's going to get paid. Staff is a very expensive part of financing a program, and it is imperative to make the case to AS of exactly what should be expected in terms of cost with this. So for example, our program grants 20 hours of paid staff per week. And typically in non-COVID season, we rely heavily as well on volunteers to keep the shop open. Typically we have 3 to 4 regularly scheduled volunteers who are in the shop and run it and are teaching students who come in to work on their bikes when paid staff are not there.
Next up, you're going to want to think about how you'll be getting tools and supplies. There may be local organizations or businesses that can give you discounts and donations. And you need to think about how you're going to get stuff down the line as well. We're set up with a regional distributor that runs out of Ashland, Oregon. If you've ever worked in a shop, you're probably familiar with Quality Bicycle Products. They're the largest national distributor. And unfortunately, they don't sell to campus bike shops. So you're going to have to look a little more local. You should also get, just at this point, a very rough estimate for cost to set up your space. It's probably going to take a couple thousand to get the tools and equipment you need. And then you need to add on anything that you'll have to pay for a vehicle, like a bike cart. And then, of course, as Justin just was talking about, paying employees is pretty expensive. We'll get we'll get to some numbers there in a bit. If you're not sure how much tools and equipment would cost if you were to get set up with a distributor, you can talk to us and we can give you the numbers that we pay, which should be similar with any distributor.
So going off of what Colin just said, a good way to save on costs is talking to outside organizations about supplies, money, or volunteers that they could be interested in donating to your program. Now, these may include environmental or sustainability organizations, transportation organizations such as Caltrans, local bike kitchens or co-ops, as well as local bike shops. Again, just approaching them and being like, hey, do you guys have any old tools you're thinking of getting rid of that you think could be salvaged and you would like to donate to us? And it's good. This is always a good opportunity to connect with outside organizations and save on costs before presenting to the AS board. And so when creating a plan overall, you don't need to be bogged down in specific details. The important part of this is that you can illustrate to the board that you know what you're doing. So if they decide to fund it, they are able to trust that you are going to be able to run this program in a sustainable way. And if they have any questions, you should have done enough research to be prepared to answer anything that they may have. That's not, specifics like how much does it cost for cable cutters? That's not going to be something you need to worry about going into this presentation.
And that brings us to our next major talking point, which is securing funding. As we mentioned earlier, we are funded by associated students here at HSU, and Northridge and Chico, the other two major shops in the CSU network, are following the same model. We've had a positive experience with it, so we recommend taking the same route. The first thing you'll want to do is to reach out to your associated students and explain to them what you want to do. They should help you put together a presentation that you can pitch to the board of directors. The board of directors will then, if they like your presentation, put your proposal on a ballot or a survey that will get pushed out to the student body as a whole. And then they can vote on it. More on that in a bit, though. Now, it will vary between universities, but this here is some information we think will come in handy when you're talking to AS, making your case. First up is student testimony. AS exists to serve students. They allocate student funds, they advocate for student programs, and if students aren't behind something, it's not going to happen through AS unless something's wrong with your AS. So you should be asking students if they see a need for a bike center, what kind of program they would like to see, and whether they just want to learn more about bikes. Maybe the concept of a whole center for that is a little abstract to some people, but they might resonate a little more with just wanting to know more about it. You should record that testimony, throw some of it in a presentation, get people to come to your presentation even and speak to AS in person. That would be the best thing you could do to get testimony across to them. You can include the success of programs like ourselves, the Bicycle Learning Center, and the Northridge and Chico shops. Hopefully, those will get back up and running after this year. Chico sounded like it was kind of iffy about whether they'd keep going or not. They're both on hold this year, of course. And you'll want to start refining that rough budget figure before you present to the board. This can still be estimates. You don't need exact prices, but you're going to want to think a little more about the cost of tools and equipment, like a workbench, a touring stand, you can look at the larger items and then kind of estimate the smaller ones. As Justin mentioned, you don't need the exact price for a pair of cable cutters, but maybe like $100 for everything you could need that has like scissor or plier type handles on it, that would be, a place to start. You'll want to think about modifications to the space if you have one in mind, like a pegboard or lighting modifications. And of course, the cost of acquiring a cart if you're going that direction. And lastly, salaries, which are probably going to be the most expensive. We have a sample calculation here for what it would take to hire one person at 10 hours a week for one school year. $4,200, not insignificant. Salaries are about 90% of the BLC's budget this year, I believe, which is a little higher than normal, but it's certainly our biggest cost by far. And even the first year when you have to buy tools and equipment, that will probably remain the biggest cost. So you should think about what you want to ask there. And this is kind of a bigger question about what you're actually pushing for with your shop. Like how much you really want to be open, how many events and other things you want to do, because those all take up a lot of time. And volunteers are awesome. I absolutely encourage volunteers over anything else. But if you're going to have difficulty attracting volunteers, you're going to have to think about paying people. Lastly, you'll need to think about the cost of parts that you just kind of can't operate without. Like cables and housing. I think we've done cables and housing like at least 8 different times this semester. We would have had to turn away a lot of people if we couldn't do that. And things like patch kits, just the essentials basically. So after presenting to your board, your AS board, hopefully they'll like it. And hopefully they'll like it enough that it can go on a survey or a ballot or something that will go out to the greater student body. There will be a time lag most likely between your presentation and the voting period. And in that period is a great time to work on outreach, which Justin will get into more in a little bit.
Okay, so when it comes to securing outside funds, obviously AS is going to be your primary funder, but there are other options because AS is a not-for-profit. They are eligible for lots of different forms of grant funding. With a quick Google search, Colin and I found 4 different examples from, ranging from a bike company to a brewery who are all willing to provide some sort of grant funds. And it's important to note that with all these types of funds, most of the time they're going to be one-time lump sums, which is typically what you're looking for. You don't want to rely on grant funding from some sort of outside company who you can't directly interact with, like AS, for continual costs, for instance, like salaries. This may be $500 to help you purchase a bike stand or some tools or different parts. And any money that you can get or can save is going to help your pitch with AS. And with these grants, AS assumes liabilities for all the grants that are awarded. So it is necessary to get their help before applying. They are a great resource that will help look through the grants with you and go through the grant process with you. And if there's any weird clauses that could be harmful to your program or just isn't something that they can see being supportive of, it is necessary to go through AS and discuss all potential grant opportunities with them. But it should not be ignored, for sure. Free money is always good.
All right, so let's say you got through to your students enough that your proposal passes. What should you do next? First up will be finding a space. Unless AS helped you nail down one before your proposal went through, this is going to be one of the bigger roadblocks in getting your space up, your shop up and running. AS most likely won't have much space that they actually manage. You're probably going to have to talk through AS to your university space allocation committee. That's what we call it here. It's probably under a different name at different schools. But talking to them with AS's help will be your best bet for finding somewhere to set up shop. If they can't provide you with anything, then it's time to start thinking about a bike cart approach or a truck like Chico and Northridge. They don't have permanent fixed spaces. They're more mobile, and they don't require, space in an actual building. It's the important thing. If you do go with a cart approach, you're going to still need somewhere to store it. Possible sources for that storage space could include your student recreation center. We've seen a few cases where SRCs or activity rental places on campus are also involved with the bike repair programs they have. So that would be a good resource to investigate for space. Any sustainability centers you guys might have on campus, or again, the space allocation committee, there might just be some shed storage space sitting somewhere unused. Lastly, before the start of the semester, you're going to want to hammer out some details. This doesn't actually have to be before the semester starts, but if you want to get up and running as quickly as possible in the fall, you're going to want to start working on this stuff over the summer. You'll probably want, well, AS will give you a final figure for your budget probably before you get out of class in spring. So you can start thinking about how much money you really have to spend on tools and supplies. And you'll want to get access to a distributor over the summer. You'll want to learn how to access your budget and manage that and gain access to your space. You'll need to start ordering tools and supplies, hopefully, and posting job listings if you're going that route.
Okay, so now we're going to get into possibly one of the more important aspects of getting your shop up and running and having your proposal pass and having people figure out that your shop exists. And this is outreach. First, we're going to be looking at media. This is pretty obvious to most people, especially those who are our age. Instagram, Facebook, or a web page on your specific university's site is going to be a great way to reach out to students. And like I mentioned before, social media is going to be necessary for gaining interest or finding that student testimonial for your actual proposal to the board. And if that proposal passes before it's voted on, you're going to want to, again, push for that outreach to gain as much support as possible. And then again, after, one of our biggest problems with the Bicycle Learning Center here at Humboldt State is because we are located under a staircase in an interesting location on campus, people sometimes cannot find us or do not know where we are. And outreach is our best way to explain that to them, to help reach those people who may be interested but don't necessarily want to put in the full effort to learn more. And so outside of social media, another popular way to get the word out are going to be newsletters. Your AS or your university will have a weekly newsletter that includes campus updates and any information on your program. If you reach out to those particular organizations, will probably be posted on those newsletters. And that's another good way to reach students, through their emails instead of through their media. So we mentioned before how local organizations are a good support channel for finding different sources of used tools, maybe little donations or volunteers. But they're also a great support system for spreading the word. If your program has not had, or if your school, I should say, has not had a campus bike shop, then students more than likely, if they need their bike fixed, are going to be going to local shops. So it's important to communicate with sustainability organizations, programs that want to save students money. There may be clubs. HSU has our cycling club, who again is super into bikes. So all of these programs are going to be interested in supporting your program and making sure that it's successful. And again, outside of your campus, there are plenty of organizations that are involved in sustainability, local bike shops, bike co-ops, bike kitchens, transportation organizations. These are all going to be groups that you're going to want to reach out to, even if they don't have something physical to give you. I am sure that if you make your case, they're more than willing to spread the word about the shop's establishment or the need for it on a campus. Again, people who like bikes are a community and are always down for more bikes. So communicate with those people.
And tying in, oh, sorry.
So as mentioned a little bit before, your campus is going to be one of the biggest sources of support for you and outreach. In this case, administration. This means program heads, department heads, university admin. They all have sort of chain emails that they are going to send out to students. I'm sure we all have received 100 really annoying emails that are nonstop, but you can be one of those emails. And who knows, maybe someone will read it and be like, this is awesome, I'm down. And so having your space being recognized either pre-establishment or post-establishment, the more you put out your message and your existence, the greater the likelihood that your space is going to be utilized to the extent that you want it to be.
And tying into all those local organizations Justin was talking about, there's also a lot of opportunity there for collaboration. This is especially true when you're just starting out and you want to establish to members of your university or the greater community who you are, what you're doing, and where you are, and of course, how they can get involved if they want to. Talking to campus organizations like sustainability programs could get you involved in their projects, and they can alert you about events that they are doing. And then you could potentially gain access to their outreach channels as well. Here at the Bicycle Learning Center, we're under the Waste Reduction and Resource Awareness Programs umbrella. And that gives us a lot of exposure to sustainability events, as well as a lot more outreach channels. Sustainability organizations should be happy to partner with you because bike repair programs encourage commuting by bike, which reduces carbon emissions from automobiles, and it promotes self-reliance that reduces waste. Lastly, group rides are the funnest way of doing outreach, if you ask me. You'll need to get a little momentum rolling there to start off with, but once you do, it's very easy to get more people to join. And that way you can show people where you actually are too. You can either ride by or start and end it right there. Yeah. And if you ever need assistance, we are always an organization that you can reach out to get input from or bounce ideas off of. Anything you need, really, just give us a shout. We might be able to help. Again, here's our email and our Instagram. And with that, any questions? It is October. I hope someone found that funny.
Tis the season. Yeah, Julian, we will be posting this and sharing it on a bunch of different platforms. We've had some organizations who expressed